Welcome, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Let's do our roll call, and then we'll go through our agenda.
Okay, Pete Walter, Planning Manager and Interim Community Development Director.
Sam Wolf, NRC Chair.
It's Brian Quisler, NRC Vice Chair.
Dave Trotter, NRC member.
William Foster, NRC member.
Dakota Hufford. I actually forget. Did I take a position last time?
You're the secretary.
Secretary. Dakota Hufford, secretary.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody, for being here tonight.
Yeah. There's a bunch from there.
Bunch up front. Very handy for printing the agenda for me. Thank you. All right, first item is Canyon's Edge Farm and Forest Project presentation by Rick Reynolds. Rick, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Great to be with you all. Thanks so much for making virtual possible here to set the tail end of the junk that maybe Pete had last time he tried to meet. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and talk you through this pretty interesting project we have going on. It's been such a roller coaster ride of big wins and terrible challenges, and we'll just kind of bring you all up to speed. I know you all share our love of natural resources, and we thought that it would be really good if you all were aware of what's happening at the site and then possibly be able to collaborate at some point. So as I go through things, just be thinking about if any of what we're working on speaks to you and how we might be able to team up at some point. And I should just mention that my wife and I have an organization called Engaging Every Student, and we work with partners developing educational resources and programs focused on environmental education. And we used to live in Portland until 2 years ago. Unfortunately, Krista was starting to develop some autoimmune issues that we learned could be related to environmental conditions. And it turned out, wow, they really were, because we sold our house. We were right at the edge of the industrial area in Portland, right next to the highway. And we're renting over here in West Lynn while we prepare to hopefully build in Oregon City. And she is fine with more trees and nature around. So that's been a really interesting part of this journey we've been on. And before I go further, I did just want to do a quick land and waters acknowledgement. We are on the traditional lands of the Tualatin Kalapuya, Atfalati people, and Clackamas peoples, past and present. And we gratefully honor the lands and their stewardship of them since time immemorial. This calls us to be better stewards of the land and waters so that our future generations can share in their beauty and abundance. And that is a big motivation for us with this project. So the site is right at the edge of Newell Creek Canyon, and I imagine you all are familiar. I wasn't that familiar until we started looking around for land, and we really couldn't believe it that this incredible biodiversity hotspot, one of the largest intact natural areas in the Portland metro area, is right here in Oregon City. And it really astounded us. We went out to look at the site. Here it is, kind of zoomed in a little bit more, and we couldn't believe the wildlife that was there, the creek running through the property. It was like grocery outlet. My favorite place to shop was right at the hill, and I could just walk down the hill a half mile, and there was this incredible spot. And so, we just kind of walked along. There's this road that goes through the property, and these big leaf maples are there. The birds are incredible. If any of you all love birds like we do, we couldn't believe the amount of bird song. Crystal held up that Merlin app, if you've seen it, from Cornell Ornithology, and it just kind of tells you the bird songs you're hearing. and it was like 35 species, like more than we had ever heard before in one place, and they were just all right there, like super interesting things. Um, and then, of course, the plants, the big leaf maples, so many different natives, lots of invasives too that we've been working on, and also planting more natives so that there's even more food for wildlife and humans. Some of the species we've been finding things like Oregon Centina, salamanders, cedar waxwings, red-legged frogs, things you just don't see, lots of other places. There's even a pair of great horned owls that live here at this site. So many different raptors, different types of hawks. There's bats. There's different species of bats even. We got the little hoary bat, my favorite. Actually, it's a little bigger than the little brown bats that are also there. And we just fell in love with the site. And even though it had some challenges, you can see the creek going through the property. So that meant that most of it wasn't going to be developable. But there was a little corner of the property that was developable. And even though none of the developers wanted to buy this, that was fine for us. And we just kind of had a small area to work with. Despite the geohazard area, you can see this is kind of showing some of the geohazard risk there. There's also a lot of opportunity too. There's also this sewer line that goes right through the property along with the road that the city maintains once a year to keep that sewer operational. There's water that runs right through the property. And so there were enough positives along with that wildlife and everything that we bought this thing despite the topography. You can see it's sloped. Once it goes down into the canyon where the creek is, it's very steep, but also spectacular. There's a waterfall right there too, the biggest waterfall we've ever seen, like close in Portland Metro. And the Newell Creek Canyon Nature Park, Metro's newest nature park, is close by. So it's a very similar kind of area. And this was our plan to build a small house for ourselves, Chris and I. A friend was going to build a similar small house, super green, better than net zero, try to show like model development, how we can bring in elements of nature, things like green roofs and work with new technologies, efficient solar panels and gray water reuse systems, and really try to bring in all the best that humans and nature could do together to kind of create a model cottage cluster here in Oregon City. So this was our plan. And then we discovered trash. Up to 8 feet or more of trash in just about an acre of the property. That was probably the worst day of my life when we discovered that. You can see this is the hillside there. It's been fascinating, all the old historical bottles and other things that we unearthed there. Old Elvis Presley memorabilia unearthed itself at one point. So it's interesting and also a huge challenge, bigger than what Chris and I could do ourselves. We're, environmental educators, and she also does research, and we didn't have the kind of funds to be able to clean up this huge site. There were indications that were hydrocarbons there as well. We could smell gas in a few places and stuff, and it was like, wow, this is. I've always been really, or not maybe always, but most of my life, been into picking up trash as kind of a hobby that I have. With my little trash grabber. And so I think this was my reward for liking to pick up trash. I got this huge brownfield site to contend with. And we had done soil testing and nothing turned up during the due diligence period. So this was quite an unwelcome surprise. You can see here's a little more of the trash there. And so our current thinking with this project is we maybe are partitioning off a little corner of the property that we can still build on for ourselves, and we'll do the cleanup on that ourselves. And then we're donating the rest of the 6.5 acres. It's like 92% to a nonprofit that we've been working to set up, and the EPA and Department of Environmental Quality and Metro will help with the cleanup of the site. Um, it's been challenging. Sometimes we think we just want to donate the whole thing, so that's still a possibility. There are a lot of things we're still working out, but this is kind of the initial thinking. We're waiting for the word from the engineering department, the public works department in Oregon City. They were going to make us put in all the utilities and improve the road and everything before we even did the cleanup. But we're hoping they might be a little bit looser on that because we still don't know if we can develop there for sure or not yet, because they haven't finished digging to know exactly what's there. But if we're lucky, we'll be able to maybe do 2 little cottage clusters side by side there on the developable area, and we're just going to see how that part goes. So the basic timeline is we did the phase 1 environmental site assessment, paid for through the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. Gratitude to them. So that we know kind of what happens. We know that the dumping occurred between 1950 and 1970, when the main Rossman landfill was not accessible because it was waterlogged in the wintertime. They would dump at our site and several others around Oregon City. So we kind of know what happened. Fortunately, we got the Clean Water Act and regulations that stopped this thing. They didn't have those regulations before that, which is why they could just dump. But this summer we'll be donating the land, either all of it or 92% or whatever amount turns out to be the best. And then we're working with the EPA and Metro to do the phase 2 environmental site assessment, which we're hoping will be done by next winter. And then we can start the cleanup process, which hopefully will be completed in 2026. Fingers crossed that'll all work out, and we'll still be able to do the little ecotopia in the corner of the property. You know, the humans hopefully will be able to live on a little bit. We have this housing crisis that we're very motivated to try to address. As Chris and I started looking for places to live, we realized, like, wow, it is really expensive. We hadn't had to pay rent for a long time, so we really can't believe how much we're paying for rent right now. And we're very motivated to show that we can do affordable building and have it be environmentally friendly. And we can use these sites that are maybe kind of marginal, close to nature, and save most of it for nature, but still have a little bit for humans. So we're hopeful we'll still be able to do this project that we hope will be a model site. We're just going to have to be a lot more patient than we thought we might need to be. Part of the project is to have a Streamin Center. And Streamin is an acronym. Some of you might be familiar with STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. That's what we do in our day jobs, developing STEAM curriculum and training teachers, and all this stuff has been on our mind for years. And we want to bring in the research is the R, and the N is for nature. So to help look to nature for inspiration to help us solve the climate crisis, to be inspired with engineering innovations, etc. So for example, before we found out we had the trash problem, we had just been donated over 100 solar panels, big ones, from a marijuana production facility that got shut down. And so we have all these, excuse me, solar panels ready to go. As soon as we get the cleanup done, we want to put them up a little bit. It turns out some plants actually grow better with a little shade, such as potatoes and some other native plants like huckleberries and things. And so we want to just have a model demonstration site in Oregon City where folks can see this technology in practice. There's only one site in Oregon right now that Oregon State is doing, and they're getting really wonderful data. So we want to do more of that. And then just looking at fungi and other nature innovations that can help with bioremediation and other challenges. So working with scientists, working with high school students to do research and then share what we learn. Another little part of this is the Streamin' team that we're starting this summer. We got a couple small starter grants from Oregon Youth Corps and also from Oregon Forest Resources Institute to engage at-risk youth, getting them outdoors, doing things like riparian restoration, planting native plants, removing the invasives, and helping with salmon habitat recovery, etc. And then hopefully we'll also be growing a Streamin' network. That's the new nonprofit we just started, where Oregon City will be kind of like the starter site and the starter programs. And then hopefully we'll have folks come to visit and be inspired to take this idea further. So some of our goals are stewardship of our lands and waters, building community, the youth engagement and service aspects. Also just having this be youth driven, so they'll have opportunities to help us choose which programs and projects we develop and then share what they're learning with others. We're going to start with high school age youth, and then they can train the middle school and elementary students and other community members that are interested. So mental and physical health is a part of this too. Some of you may be aware that there's a crisis with our teens, especially with mental health. When we were younger, those of us in our 50s, it was almost unheard of that kids had this like high level of anxiety and depression, and now it's about a third of our kids. And we know from the research that getting out in nature is a big way to solve this problem, being physically active and making a difference. And we help to get the Outdoor School for All program going, which we have great data on now. We know that it makes a huge difference for grades 5 and 6 students, and we want this to kind of continue into the service learning for the older students. So we're just looking to grow and learn through this project and hopefully inspire others to do the same. And then with luck, be able to show the affordable, sustainable housing aspects as well, and just be inspired with the beauty and inspiration of nature. We're very committed to having fun no matter what happens with all these incredible trials and tribulations we've been through. We're still laughing and having fun, and hopefully we'll keep that going. We have wonderful board members, our friends Lana and Matthias, educators and social work folks that are helping. Lana's the new board chair. Our friend Greg Smith, who's a retired professor, very influential professor from Lewis and Clark College, has written books like Ecological Education in Action, written with Bill Frews Williams, a professor from Portland State. And we want to bring a lot of these ideas to Oregon City and other places as well. Our friend Joel Salter retired as a hydrologist from the EPA and also a chief scientist there on ocean studies. And it turns out this guy put himself through college and graduate school as a builder. And so he's somebody who's hopefully going to be building with us at the site and helping to implement these green technologies and all. So my voice is just about done. I managed to make it through without coughing too much. But just in closing, this is a big part of the motivation. Chief Seattle here. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth, and we appreciate what you all do. And thanks for the support and listening to the presentation today. I should just mention that Chris isn't here because she really doesn't want what I have. She has an important meeting on Thursday, so I am sequestered down here. But are there thoughts or questions from anyone?
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'll open it up to the committee.
Thanks, Sam.
And anyone else virtually.
I've got a couple of things. Rick, thanks so much for the presentation. It's clear. You've been like so thoughtful in putting it together. You've done a great job expressing what you guys are trying to do in town. I'm really excited for it. Sorry you've had these challenges with the trash, what a bummer, but it sounds pretty cool that you guys are figuring out a way to get through it. So I think that this whole group, I think I can speak for us and say like, we're behind a lot of the things that you're saying and are happy to support. So my question for you is, when you think about like, why did you come here today? What can NRC do for you, if anything? I'd love to hear the answer to that.
Yeah, thanks so much. One thing is we just wanted to make you aware of the project right now. I don't think we have any like specific asks, but we appreciate the support. Thanks for saying all that. And you know, one thing that might be helpful is, let's say the city, we're waiting for the final word about if they're going to be able to like waive any of these requirements before we can do a partition, if it turns out we need to do that. And if they say that, you know, we've got to do the utilities and everything, like we don't think we'll be able to move forward with this, which would just be kind of heartbreaking. Or we would just, you know, have to donate all the land, which might mean that it just stays for wildlife forever, which we're mostly okay with. We did really hope that we would be able to live there too, because like when you plant these plants, if you don't water them the first three years, it's hard to keep them all alive. So like that is still a goal, that we'll still be able to do this green building there. And we're hoping the city will work with us, and maybe if they can't, they've been supportive, but they're also very strict, and maybe some of you have run into that before. Like it might be nice to maybe get a letter. So like if you send a letter of support, I could possibly draft something and send it over. But we're not quite there yet. So just stay tuned, maybe is all I'd have to say, Brian.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Sorry.
I had a question. I was kind of curious. What is the extent of the trash and the developable chunk?
Yeah. What we know so far is that acre that we think has the trash on it, it goes from like 1.5 feet thick deep to 8 feet deep at least, and maybe significantly deeper as it goes down in the canyon. But we won't know all of that until we do the phase 2 environmental site assessment. We want to wait on that because it can cost like $100,000 or more to do that kind of work. They drill in, they do all the testing for the contaminants and stuff. This is basically a landfill site. And like I said, we've found signs of hydrocarbons, so that's where it can become like a very expensive cleanup, and it has to be done the right way. So we don't really know yet. And we're hoping we'll know, you know, by this fall. But that's kind of to be determined. Did that answer your question?
I was kind of curious if you could just scroll back to like one of your plats, and you can maybe just
Sure.
draw cursor, just to give me a picture.
Yeah, like right here.
Yeah.
Is this a good one? Yeah, so can you see my arrow?
Yes.
Yeah, great question. Thanks. I was going to make more of a point about this. So the trash is basically, this is the property line. Some of you may know Shaw Spady, one of our heroes who helped to save Newell Creek Canyon. She owns 60 acres to the north, which is part of what you're seeing here. And here's the property line. So it's from the property line. It's not in this very far northwest corner of the property that we don't think it's right there. But most of the rest of all this here, this is the developable area that's outside the shaded areas. And all of this north of the road, we believe has trash, and it goes down into the canyon, down around here, we think. And this is kind of where it starts getting very steep, and there's, you know, a lot of big trees and stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit of unknown, but this is mostly what it is. And that's where it's pretty much all covered in invasive blackberry right now.
This is actually just around the corner from my house, so I'm familiar with this section.
Oh, really? That's amazing. Yeah, it's such a great area. We love it. It's just kind of surprising that someone would want to dump in this beautiful natural area, but a little different mindset back there, I think.
Any other questions or comments?
Are there any events coming up in the near future that the public could attend and see? I'd be curious to see it in person.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brian. I would love to give anyone a tour. So maybe if you'll want to talk about a time, if you'd like to come visit, I could just give you a tour. It's so accessible because of the 15-foot public easement and road that goes through the property. You can see the waterfall. You can just hear that incredible bird song and stuff. Um, we often are treated to bunnies and little snakes and salamanders. It's kind of amazing what you can just stumble into. So let me know if there's a time, and I'll be happy to give a tour. We don't have anything scheduled, but happy to do it whenever works best for you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate the work, and I'll probably stick around the rest of the meeting if that's okay. I'll just stop sharing my screen now.
Very good. Wonderful.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Great. So next we have some discussion items, and then after that, communications. We do have a public comment though. Would it be okay if we allow public comment ahead of the discussion items? Okay. You guys want to do public comment now? Thanks for hanging out. Garrett, I thought you'd like this presentation. Reminds me a lot of the Environmental Learning Center. What Rick Reynolds did on the thing.
Yes, Jerry was part of the inspiration, starting the Environmental Learning Center and all the great work that's been done over there. We thought it'd be cool to have a site with a creek and everything right nearby. So thanks, Jerry, for making all that happen.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Okay, thanks for letting us come tonight. This is Dorothy Dolesrud, and my name is Jerry Herman. Back in 2006, this organization, Natural Resource Committee, got established, and there was about 4 or 5 founding members. Shaw Spady was one. Shaw Spady had a lot to do with the areas that Rick's been talking about in Mill Brook Canyon and its protection. Doug Neely, who many of you know, one of our former mayors, always have been interested in this kind of thing. Marcia Sinclair from Damascus was a founding member, and so was I back then in 2006. And the first thing we did at Alice Norris's request was a environmental discovery tour. We did that, okay? And first of all, I want to say something about Rick for just a second. Rick's intentions and his effort are remarkable. This man is in the spirit of my favorite governor, Tom McCall, the best darn governor you'll ever recall, because Tom went out there and did things and said things and got people excited. And Rick, as a teacher and advocate for environmental stewardship and demonstration, I think he's creating the next environmental showcase project in this area. It's just a wonderful thing what he's doing, and with all the challenges you heard about the refuse issues and such. So watch this guy. He's going to do really good work. All right. The reason we're here tonight is there a one-page handout everybody has?
Yeah.
Okay. The one-page handout, we'll probably send something more elaborate to you, is basically 2 years ago in 2023, we formed a group. Dorothy was part of this. 11 other members, former Fish and Wildlife Director, DEQ Director of Oregon, retired, and others, to come together and look at the Natural Resource Overlay District ordinance, which Pete and his staff administer. It's a very good ordinance, but we felt there's some things that could be done to tidy it up. And so we worked for about 8 months, come up with some ideas. Then in your handout, we went on a tour with John Lewis, the Public Works Director. He just retired about 8 months ago or so, to look at sites in Oregon City. He was troubled with how do we deal with NWAD stuff. It's a difficult thing. Natural Resource Overlay District. What does it mean? How do we comply with it? And so we all learned something from that, but we never got the job completely done. But Aquila, the planner who just left, senior planner of the city, said, at least you got everybody together, your group, 12 of you, to look at things holistically and see what can be done to get people to understand what the intention of the ordinance is. The ordinance is, along with other things that Pete administers very effectively, is the background and focus point for ecology and economy. Two root words, ecology and economy, that come together to make this community work. It's the mainstay component of code that determines how things should and could be done. And we found some things that maybe could be done better. And I don't want to go into those now, but I'd like to tell you that we're still meeting. We're still meeting because we want to see that ordinance tidied up a bit more if it can be, or some more discovery tours done to look at things in the field. One of the things we felt in particular, the best thing to do is get out in the field and look at things. And that's what we did on that particular day. So we're asking you to consider in your work plan, including something about the Enrod ordinance. We are willing to have our group continue to be a focus group for that effort. We're willing to do a lot of work. Pete's got enough things to do, and you've got other things on your agenda, but we're asking you to at least consider the natural resource overlay district as a component that could be looked at in your work plan. The second thing we're asking is, David Frazier was a city administrator here many years ago, about 2012 through 2016. Maybe I've got it not quite right. About that 2008 or so through 2016, almost 8 years. David came to us one time with a request. Is there something we can do about public lands, including them reforested or in some other way enhanced with wildlife habitat? And we said, what are you talking about, sir? We have 500 acres that the city owns that are in many cases not parkland or other purpose lands, and maybe they could be put into some environmental benefit use. And I feel strongly, and I know Dorothy does too. Dorothy founded your woodland heritage, your heritage tree programs was work of Pete and others, but she also worked on woodlands and forested areas that now exist, not just a heritage tree, but an entire assemblage. How important they could be in keeping habitat, climate issues, foremost carbon sequestration. So what we want to do is reinvigorate that idea of looking at public lands in this city where the community can respond to climate change in direct planting projects, not just on Arbor Day, but on the right day. Sometimes in April is not the best time to plant. I'm sure you're all aware of that. There's certain times planting work better than others, establishment wise and all that. So we're asking you to consider climate resiliency and recovery through community as being a part of what you might at least consider. Not you do it, we're willing to help do it. The same Enrod group is willing to lead that effort with you if you'd like to consider it. So I want to complete what we're going to say real quick here by saying 50 years ago, the Environmental Learning Center was founded at the college. I didn't know nothing. I was a student out of the military and so forth. And I became involved heavily in the whole thing and became the director. Well, this coming Wednesday, you're all invited at 2 o'clock, this coming Wednesday, not tomorrow, following week, on the 21st. There's a Environmental Learning Center party, cake cutting and all the rest. And some people that never got recognized for the building of it are going to be recognized. But this deep story of what happened there is a lot of the knowledge I have. Strange things like the boulder sculptures that were a part of the pond because the art department was right next door. The heron landed on the sculpture, knocked it over, and the boulders floated away. Think about that one. Or Bucky the beaver. Well, Bucky was a nutria, and Bucky had 16 babies, and all sorts of things happened. So I'm going to talk about some of these kind of interesting things from the past. You're all invited. And then one last thing is I'm going to send you to Samantha and Pete invitation to be a part of our Wednesday, June 25th discovery tour of our river environments. There's a group called the River Assets Task Force that's come together over the last 3 years that is working with Oregon City, Westland, Gladstone, Wilsonville now, Lake Oswego, and Milwaukee on looking at how does the river work from the standpoint of ecology and economy. And the Oregon City Business Alliance is part of this. That's pretty darn good. A business alliance is part of this effort. So I'll send an invitation to you folks. It's from 11 until 2 may not work for your schedules, but for those that can come, you're welcome to be our guest. So we'll let you know about that. So anyway, consider including a couple items like this in your work plan if you could. And come to the ELC for 50 years of interesting facts that nobody's heard of before. And then think about our Discovery Tour on the river on June 25th, Wednesday, June 25th. Thanks for letting me speak to you. Keep up the good work.
You too.
Look at those
Thank
empty
you.
lands where we could put some trees.
Thanks, Jared. Good to see you.
We have to leave.
No, it's good to see you. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you all.
I'm so glad, Rick, that you're my new neighbor. It's really, that's a very exciting piece of property down there.
Oh, great. I look forward to meeting you. Thanks so much. And great presentation, Jerry. I look forward to seeing you next week.
We used to go scavenge those dumps back when, like, we were babies.
Thank you all.
They don't
Thank you. Thank you.
down there all the time. Cheers.
Yep.
Excuse me.
All right. Thank you, Jared. All right, next is our discussion items, update NC work plan.
Yeah, okay, so here's a quick intro. We're into the new biennium already, 2025, 2027. We have in your packet the 2023, 2025 work plan with a lot of numbered project ideas. I think some of what the types of projects that Jerry and Rick are talking about are already broadly discussed as things that the NRC would support under your NRC responsibilities in promoting community involvement in natural resources conservation. Just want to mention that. But I also wanted to point out that the City Commission has now adopted their biennial 2025, 2027 priorities, and the ones that are specifically related to the NRC, which you guys have been talking about for a very long time, are striving to become recognized as a Bee City USA and increase high quality habitat for pollinators, in particular native bees, maintaining our Tree City USA designation, and identify and apply for grant funding to complete a tree canopy assessment and determine the needs and costs associated with a city arborist, which are essentially two separate things there. But we've already, the tree canopy assessment one is something that Tom Kissinger in Parks is also supportive of, and would definitely be something that we would need to collaborate with PRAC and the Parks Division on, because they're the ones that are managing the parks and then potentially public works properties as well. But first, I think Tom Kissinger was the one who wanted to head up the canopy on Parkland, canopy assessment on Parkland. The other thing that I just mentioned is that it's been a long time since the city's nuisance plant list and native plant lists were updated. We kind of rely on the regional lists that have been sent around, and we accept those. And but we've also got new parking ordinance that's going into effect. It's not new, it's amended parking lot requirements for increased tree canopy for large parking lots that are half an acre if they're new. And that's something where the plant list that we currently have is kind of organized according to natural biomes and not for urban type planting. So potentially putting together a list of trees and shrubs that are appropriate for parking lots and planting recommendations for those. And that could be any parking lot, really. It doesn't have to be large ones, but right now we kind of point to the city's street tree list when we're talking about recommendations, but most projects that have a landscape architect are going to put forward a plan and a planting plan based on a landscape architect recommendation. So it would be nice to have a more refined list. But yeah. So if there is interest in refining the list for 2025, 2027, I'm happy to help with that discussion.
Well, I also want to throw it back to the city. Thanks for listening.
Sure, yeah.
And it helps to know what the city commission priorities are. I'm glad to hear about the tree City USA maintaining and Bee City USA doing, and the tree canopy assessment. And is it city arbors or city forest?
Oh, it doesn't have a formal name yet.
Okay.
In city forest or city arborist, you know.
Okay.
The
Staff
challenge is
tree
finding the money.
Sure. I'd be curious to know, like, I have more questions about that, but I want to throw this is like the list that we're capturing ideas for the NRC. So I want to throw it out to the rest of the committee. What other ideas should we consider?
Are you asking in general or with respect to these lists?
To the work plan. So this was kind of guidance from the city commission that this is their priorities, that regard us, the Natural Resources Committee, but we also we might have some of our own ideas. And this is the time to address them. So, any ideas from you, Brian?
I had just like a couple of notes, and still being like so new and stuff, I think like my notes had a lot of like questions, but one thing that was just like we have invasive public outreach. We have invasive plants. I was just thinking to go ahead and add invasive insects, things like the emerald ash borer and the oak gall borer, things like that.
Yes, EAB. Are you thinking like a EAB response plan, or what do you mean?
So yeah, I don't know specifically what I mean. So the thing says to improve public outreach and information about invasive plants. So it's pretty vague there. I just was suggesting probably adding it as a line item. Most of my notes, like I said, are kind of questions like, do we amend some of these line item numbers to like update like new expectations, or like I'm not quite sure too like what progress has been made on some of them. Another idea that I had just as I was reading through the responsibility one stuff is, so I think it talks about social media in that one. Pretty sure, yeah. So just wasn't sure like how we as the NRC had kind of gone about that in the past, or what, yeah, like what that's been like. Maybe creating something like a social media liaison to work with like Hannah or whoever does a lot of the city outreach newsletter. I think Hannah does the newsletter. Yeah, those are my thoughts. I have more, but I'll let other folks go.
So let me paraphrase. So like on social media, like some articles or posts about invasive.
I am just looking at the work plan, and I just took some notes on kind of some of the line items. So one, the social media one was, one sec, let me continue to strengthen and encourage participation. There's a lot of mention of social media on like a lot of different stuff, Oregon City website, newsletters. It kind of just says that. So I'm just like not sure how we've communicated anything to them, the city, whoever's putting all of that together, whoever's running social media, and that maybe, yeah, creating some type of person. Honestly, I would volunteer for it. That's kind of why I'm suggesting it, is like that's part of what I do at work anyway. So yeah, that's my thought there with the social media thing. That's not tied to one specific other kind of initiative. And then in terms of the invasive insect, awareness, kind of just in the same vein or even same like line item as invasive plants, just that it's an emerging, issue, especially in Clackamas County, with EAB. So
Yes.
Okay.
But just, so we have done some like public outreach, through like Trail News, right?
Jared Lyman is our communications coordinator, and he works pretty closely with Hannah Schmidt, the citizen involvement coordinator. So he would be my go-to on the staff to try to improve outreach and social media efforts in that regard.
Okay, so maybe, it'd be good to know, like, for you, Dakota, like what level of outreach you'd be interested in doing? And then we could, coordinate with Jared
Jared Lyman.
and
and
Hannah, and
And
then we can see how to implement that. So if you wanted to include, or keep this outreach component of our work plan, then we could keep that for the updated work plan, and then have specific projects to support that. Would that be what you're thinking?
yeah, really kind of whatever has functioned in the past or what sounds like will function, just us getting some of our important information to the city in a nice packaged way for them to just put it out on their channels and all their stuff. Yeah, and I'm happy to step into some of that.
Well, that sounds good. Let's keep that line item then. And then Dakota, if you want to have like a short list of topics that you wanted to pursue, I'd be happy to support you, and then we'll connect with Jared and Hannah.
Yeah, and I think, well, I would ask Jared and Hannah what they recommend in terms of if there's grant funding for additional social media outreach, because I remember when we were putting this one together, there was quite a bit of detail in it. Here it talks about interpretation and signs and things that are actually out in the Oregon City environment that people can use to, better interpret our natural resources. So I don't know what's out there in terms of that kind of grant funding. There may be Metro funding potentially for those sorts of things, and possibly even Oregon City enhancement grant for that kind of thing, which would be a pretty significant source of funding. The Metro, I know Metro, and I just don't know how much is available in the Oregon City enhancement grant, which is the one that's funded through the transfer site, Metro transfer site.
Okay, but we wouldn't need grant funding to support additional social
Oh,
media.
I'm just thinking about like brochure production
Oh,
and
yeah.
that sort
So
of
like print media.
print media, yeah. But in terms of social media, maybe not. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds to me like Dakota, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but is suggesting like an organic social media effort that's just more informed by NRC than it has been before.
Okay.
And again, if I heard that, I see you're nodding. Yeah, if I heard that right, I think we have a lot of opportunity there, because we've never, at least in my short time, but I'm pretty sure before that, like never done that. And what that could look like is like a monthly or quarterly or whatever, just meeting where Dakota meets up with these communications folks, passes on the priorities of the NRC. And
Okay.
maybe we take a little bit of time during each meeting to say like, look, what do we think Oregon City residents would benefit to hear about right now? And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be anything like
Yeah.
with a high production value.
Right.
It can just be like, this is what an Emerald Ash borer looks like. Like, be on the lookout, and that's it. Just
Just
simple
how
stuff
you
like
report
that.
it and all that.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
that's how
all
you
good.
report it, exactly.
Well, I'm happy to facilitate that meeting with those guys. Make it a regular thing.
Dakota, did I just sign you up for more than you were?
No, that's exactly kind of, what I was also thinking.
And I wanna just address what Dakota was saying about invasive plants and species. I think, I don't see any reason that we can't just like tag on to that line. So that way, when we read our work plan and think about it, when the city leadership reads that work plan and think about it, they see that word and it's X. Cause that, like, we know it's coming, where there's gonna like be a day in the next, whatever, it's gonna be 10 years, where all of a sudden invasive insects are an emergency. And so to just kind of start like socializing that language, I think it is valuable.
In terms of the lists, I mean, the invasive plant list has a functional purpose for like, you can't plant these like, you know, in a public right of way or whatever, right? Like it's a reference for what you can't plant in certain places. Whereas the invasive insect list is more of like something to educate the public about.
True.
So I mean, they're right,
They're different
separate
functions.
things.
That makes sense. Maybe we need a separate line in the plan. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is for public education and one is for like practical purposes, right? And also public, I mean, the plans we want to educate
Yeah,
the
one's
public as
where
well. but-
development needs,
Right.
no one's planting insects necessarily.
Right.
It's a good call.
So, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, they do use the invasive plant list for other
Yeah.
things.
How do we collaborate on, like, if we're gonna update the invasive plant list, how do we go about collaborating on that?
Oh, good question.
Like a Google Doc, and we just,
Pardon?
like a Google Doc, and we all just work on it or something?
Oh, I see.
I don't know, I'm new
Yeah.
here, so I don't know how
Well,
you do
last
that.
time we forego having a static list that we updated like every 5 years or so because it kept getting updated more quickly with our regional programs. So like the Soil and Water Conservation District has a very robust list and they are on top of it regularly and addressing it with the community. So we felt it made more sense to, instead of us having our own Oregon City list, we have close partners that we work with all the time that are here locally. They have a list and they're curating it with the best information. So we felt like it made more sense to just refer to their documentation rather than have ours.
Yeah.
independently.
That's right, and that's why, because they have the resources and we're aware of the current trends that led to them having a more regularly updated regional plant list. But in the meantime, we had these static lists because we adopted them, I think, in 1999 in order to comply with metro requirements. And since that time, you know, things have changed a little bit. So, yeah, I think the part about public education is still critical, but maybe it's not so important to actually update the city's lists. I just don't know what would take their place in this week.
I guess I was trying to understand why, like, the commissioner's asking us to update the list, but for what purpose, like, where?
Well, the commission this is something that had been on the list for some time. So I guess I'm throwing the question out to the committee if you think it's worthwhile. You know.
Well, the same issue is that it was last time is that we don't have like all the best resources and
Yeah.
it changes all the time, so.
Mm.
Having a static list that doesn't change all the time has limited use as it ages, so.
And I'm curious how the list is used. I mean, is that given to like, if someone's developing an in-rut area, they point to the city list and say, you can't plant any of these? And if it's not
Well,
on that
there's-
list, then they're free to do it.
Yeah, there's parts of the zoning code that say you shall not plant plants on this list. And then, you know, and then for you are recommended to use plants on the native list within the natural resource overlay district. But in actuality, in practice, we refer to those more regularly updated regional lists. And because the zoning code is also static and hard to change unless we're doing a comprehensive update. So.
So it might make sense to say, we're not gonna update the list, we're just gonna continue to refer to Metro's
Yeah.
list or whatever it is.
I mean, it might make sense to strike that one off the list. Number 4, number 4 here. Where it says amend city resolution nuisance and native plant list to reference. I don't know that that's practical. I think maybe assure that assure coordination with Clackamas Soil and Water District, Metro, Portland, Willett, and other entities to when referencing native and nuisance plants, something more broad.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense.
Okay.
Having a static list.
I love the idea of striking as many things as we can. For practical reasons.
Yeah.
Like, when we look at this list and we consider, we have 6 meetings in the next 12 months, right? So if we really want to be effective, we can't take on everything, but we can sit here and say the words of everything every 2 months. But like, we can't make any difference, I think, if we try and look at too much stuff. So I would advocate that as we look at this list, we ruthlessly shorten it. And consider what's really the most important to us that we might actually be able to accomplish.
Okay.
I don't have any examples of things that we should cut off of it right now, but just a lens that.
Yeah, well, you know, the things that you could probably consider staying on there are the ones that are clearly in line with city commission supported for them, you know, like you've got the Bee City USA and that sort of thing. Which pulls in the integrated pest management aspect. So those could remain. The first one on the list there is the public tree inventory. So I can stay.
Yeah.
And we just talked about the social media one. I think we're doing 2 on a fairly regular basis through the Heritage Tree Program. I don't know, we haven't done any updates to the website in a while, but that was like the main thing. We haven't put together a brochure for the Heritage Tree Program. That might,
That might be, I'd be open to striking that one. It's a worthy activity for Valley. Not within our higher priority list.
okay.
Would anyone argue? I'm hoping.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, so straight, got that one.
Yeah.
Number 5, work with property owners to voluntarily seek heritage tree designation. I think within Thimble Creek concept plan area there, I believe that one can be struck because the golf course owner has decided to sell to a developer and develop the land as a subdivision. And they didn't follow through with that voluntary designation.
Where's the Creek?
Well, it's east of Beaver Creek Road. It used to be called Beaver Creek Road concept plan, so it's a concept plan area that is partially annexed and included the golf course and other lands to the north of Loader Road, which are intended to be like employment lands. There's parkland designation in there, part of the Parks Master Plan there. So we've got some new code that requires parkland dedication there. There's a big Bonneville Power Administration power line easements all through it. And those are very constraining in terms of what you can do underneath them. So it's an area that the economic development staff, James Graham and Ann Griffin, have been doing public outreach for to identify barriers to development. And there's a lot of different owners there with different goals, and the parcels are all irregular shapes, and it's very hard to assemble one large piece of acreage. So some of the challenges there that they've identified some strategies for to try to loosen up the zoning code and make things easier for outdoor storage, for example. and to try to accommodate and offset the power line easements constraints, so we can no longer put parking under power line easements. And so that pushes, if anybody wants to put parking, they have to put it outside of these easements. So we have to look at the parking code as well, and be more flexible there, but that needs city commission direction. So we're not gonna be amending the code anytime soon for that until the city commission directs. So,
Understood.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, we get, I check that.
Number 6, support city partnerships with HOAs, Metro and Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, Oregon City Parks Foundation, and other groups for habitat improvement projects within their overall boundary. I think this is something where if any one of these groups is applying for grants to do projects, then the NRC is gonna lend their support too.
Yeah, so we can keep that.
Excuse me. Support partnerships with Oregon Heritage Tree Council and Oregon Community Trees. Okay.
Seems like any of them that start with the word support are sort of passive engagements that if something comes up, maybe we don't need to strike them, but they're not gonna be action items.
Yeah, we're here if you need us,
Yeah.
and it's good to have it in the public document.
Mhm.
Those people can go and see that we're here, right? To ask.
Provide input to the city commission on amendments to the city's tree protection and removal codes.
Is that specific, or is that just like, be ready to do that? Is there a specific ask about that?
Well, there was a specific ask and you guys presented it to the city commission. They didn't accept it. So, it's not to say it wouldn't be something they look at in the future under a different city commission or different membership.
Well, we could modify it to talk about some of these other ones, like
Yeah.
the tree canopy assessment.
Number 2, the integrated pest management. I think we can keep that because we're gonna be working through that.
Yeah, with the B City USA as a
Yeah.
component.
Improve public outreach and information about invasive plants and invasive, what were we saying, insects?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dakota volunteer, she now runs the project.
That's awesome. And we struck 4 about the native and nuisance plant list, but I think, we could just say reference regionally accepted and regularly updated plant lists from Clackamas Soil and Water District, Metro Portland.
Yeah.
Keep that part of it.
That sounds good.
Number 5 was very specific. With the Public Works Department, explore feasibility of offering reduced stormwater rates in return for planting trees in the right of way to intercept rainfall, reduce runoff, and improve stormwater quality. I don't know that there's been any traction or movement on that.
Yeah, I'd be open to striking that one. An effort to support others that we have.
Me too.
What do you guys?
Dave or Dakota or Will, do you have reservations about striking some stuff?
No reservation.
Okay.
Okay. Right, making progress.
Yeah.
Support application and participation in B City USA.
Do you want to, just to, for the effort of efficiency,
Mhm.
the integrated pest management is like a component of B City USA, is that right?
Yep.
Um,
Yeah,
would we need to have both on there to do one?
no. I mean, you could strike 2 and you would end up doing it through 6.
Okay.
But if you want to add
Would
something,
you agree with that?
I don't know. If you want to keep something in 6 about IPM, you could do that.
We're considering lightening up our work plan to make it more actionable. And in the section 2, we're recommending to cut the number 2 item that talks about developing an IPM, but keeping number 6, which talks about support the city's application for B City USA, which implies that we have an IPM. Would you agree with that, or should we keep an IPM action item separate? Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
I personally do think that the IPM should be kept as an actionable item. It was one of the notes I had too. Just kind of not sure how that looked in the past, and how to engage with that. But I do personally, I think that's really important as its own.
Okay, so it shouldn't be lumped in with number 6.
Let me double check. I do tend to think it should be its own,
I just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
for sure.
Keep this up.
Okay. 7 under 2. Promote public awareness of ways to promote and preserve invertebrate habitat.
To promote some.
Sorry, promote and preserve invertebrate habitat through educational events such as booths at a spring resource fair, the city website, trail news, the city Facebook page, and others social media.
That sounds like what we were recommending, or Dakota was recommending. Is that already iterated elsewhere in the program, in the work plan?
Well, that one's very specific to invertebrate habitat. You could add invertebrate habitat to number 3 and strike number 7 or something like that.
Would that be okay? Can we add invertebrate habitat to the social media outreach, Dakota?
I mean, you're doing it through.
I'm just the straight up wrong person to ask. I actually fully believe that invertebrate habitat should again be kind of its own subject, but that's entomology bias.
Promoting public awareness through social media and other public engagement. We had it as a separate line item in the work plan compared to the invasive plants and invasive insects.
Yeah, so when you read NRC responsibility 1, number 3 mentions a whole bunch of things, but it doesn't actually say it doesn't have the word habitat in there.
I see.
So you could just add it. It's all about promoting public awareness.
Sure.
I was gonna bring up the possibility of partnering with the Backyard Habitat Certification Program. It's something that I feel like a lot of the city's initiatives are like very narrowly focused on some facet of the ecosystem. Like we talk about trees, and it's like trees and only trees. Trees are good. We want a lot of trees, but the discussion, not just the city, but like in the public discourse in general, when people talk about planting, it's synonymous with planting trees, and it's usually to the exclusion of all the other kinds of plants that comprise a healthy ecosystem. And one thing I like about the Backyard Habitat Program is the language it uses is, I think, encourages a more holistic view of the ecosystem. It's not just trees, it's not just invertebrate habitat, it's like all this stuff, and it encompasses a lot of these points that we're talking about. I think that's good in terms of like the actual projects that get done, but also educating the public. I think if they, you're not just telling them to like plant a tree, or, have a pollinator garden. You talk about habitat in general and it includes those things, but not just those things. And I think maybe there's ways that the city could, have maybe in the parks we have Backyard Habitat certified plantings there. We talked about the Oregon City Parks Foundation, and we might approve their applications for projects. Say, okay, we'll approve it, but we would like you to get Backyard Habitat certified, which would be nice for the public, to promote the program in the city, but also ensure that it was held to a certain standard. I think working in that certification into as many of these projects as possible, I think could be beneficial.
Okay. Well, I think under number 6, support city partnerships with all these other groups. We don't mention backyard habitat, but could just add that.
I don't know if that actually adds another thing to what we're doing, but
Well,
I feel like
I'm
it's kind of
saying
a glue.
if you add that, you should probably strike like 7 or 8.
Unless you wanted to do something, a project where find a role of implementing some of this outreach that focuses on habitat or backyard or promoting backyard certification.
Oh yeah, like with the the social media.
Yeah,
Yeah, just talking about it.
just talking
encouraging
about it,
it.
creating posts, creating content, and then, working with city staff to publish it.
Mm.
I don't know, are we just throwing stuff at the wall here? Is that like?
No, we're actively writing.
Oh, I mean,
our
like,
plan.
I have some things I can throw at the wall. But so like, I was thinking, Inrod, you was mentioning Inrod earlier. I live in an Inrod boundary. There's a few things I have ideas about for Inrod, but one of them is if you live in an Inrod, I mean, people pay like, there's a lot of fees associated with building an Inrod and, people pay it. One way they could maybe like benefit from those fees they're paying is if you live in an Inrod, the city says, we will pay your fees if you want to get backyard habitat certified. Because that's, I mean, that's, if you live in an Inrod area, ideally what we want you to do with the land is to restore it to native vegetation. So, hey, if you want to get backyard certified, you're an Inrod, you don't have to pay whatever the fee is, city covers it. It might encourage some people to do it.
If it's a budget item that the city commission is gonna have to budget for, then the city commission has to make that decision. So, and I don't see any additional money in this next biennium for that kind of thing. That would be an additional ask. Generally speaking, if it's a private developer doing a project, the city's position is always, well, great, you pay for it. There are grant programs available and the city can sponsor projects where there is, a willing partner and restoration grants available through Metro and that sort of thing, but they rely on those groups being organized and having a goal, which is, when Jerry was talking about John Lewis and the Trillium Park HOA project back behind the hospital, that HOA had 1,000 different ideas about what they wanted that area to look like, including having swing sets and slides and active recreation in their natural resource overlay district. And it had been explained to them up front that the NROD is not that kind of environment for that. It is about, passive recreation and restoration of native habitat. And so that never sank in with that. So, it's very difficult to facilitate those things unless there's cohesive leadership in those groups. Just pointing that out.
So if we wanted to have a project that included pursuing some of these grants, like nature and neighborhood grants that Metro does, or the city enhancement grants, that could then go towards, promoting backyard habitat and supporting paying up those fees.
Yeah, and I think, what Metro looks for is some city sponsorship in the form of staff assistance to administrate things. And a matching grant comes in the form of staff time.
Yeah, William, I think we can agree that that's a great idea. And we would love to do it, I think, but like the reality is we're an advisory committee that meets 6 times a year. And what you're talking about costs money, spending money is hard. So I think my encouragement would be like, how do you start kind of campaigning around that idea? And I think taking the first step with us here today. But at the end of the day, like, all of us can get behind you and say, yes, let's do it. And that can be the last we ever hear of it. So I guess maybe we can all think together about like, are there ways that we can float ideas like that one specifically, and other ideas like it, up higher in the kind of city ecosystem, where we can start maybe getting some support from people who spend city money.
Yeah, I figured that was a stretch too.
So it's okay.
It's
It's
great.
I'm not really sure.
it's just space to put down.
Totally.
I have a related idea that I'll just throw out. Topic. I mentioned this when I was interviewed, that there's this issue with Enrod where, you know, the rules are really only actively enforced at the time that a development is happening. It impacts the way that they can develop, and also, you know, if they're gonna landscape, they have to get a planting plan approved. But once it's approved, from that point on, it's like anything can happen, you know, and especially if like the house gets sold, the person who buys the house has no idea that they're in Enrod or what Enrod is, or even if they do know, they don't have to follow the plan, they can do whatever they want. So I'm not suggesting any kind of additional enforcement or code change, but send out an informational packet whenever the property changes hands that just says, you're in an Enrod area. These are the rules about what you can and can't do. And here's some helpful, friendly advice, like maybe backyard habitat program, even if we're not paying for it, we just say, this is something you could do. These are some resources. And we do something similar already with the historic districts. I'm in a historic district. I've gotten several packets. I don't know what triggers it sending. It seems like maybe once a year. We could do something similar for Enrod.
Yeah, it's since the historic program is supported by the State Historic Preservation Office, and Oregon City is a certified local government, they give us $15,000 a year to promote the historic preservation program and put packets together for homeowners. The one thing I'm wondering in relation to your idea is, we typically don't monitor sales transactions because we don't know what's going on in the market. I don't know if our GIS staff could figure out an algorithm in GIS so that when property owner changes on a particular tax lot within the Enrod, we get a flag that is a list of properties that have sold within the overlay district. Is a question I'd be happy to follow up on.
Is that at a county level, probably? It's like,
Well, we get the data from the county every month, I think. And sometimes there's a lag, but generally it's monthly. Yeah. So that might work. I'd have to talk to Chris Dunlop about it. He's our GIS guy. But seems looking.
Yeah. Or you can even just do it as like a monthly.
Yeah.
Quarterly trigger.
Yeah, they get a list of, I know they get a list of anything where there's a tax lot change. That's a little different than a tax lot just changing hands, so.
I
But,
could
you
follow
know,
up with
it's a
that.
piece of data that they've got access to.
I could call Lycos, whatever just ask if there's, they have maybe a software API.
Oh,
or
I don't think you need to. I think Chris already knows, he would know if it's feasible. So I'm happy to follow up on that idea.
Okay, yeah, that'd be very helpful.
It'd be cool. I often wondered about that as a similar type of outreach where you're like, hey, you're in the Enron. Here's a little information for you.
Is the vision that like maybe this committee would do 1 or 2 work sessions a year or something where we just put together the packet, make sure that everything's not out of date
Yeah,
and like approve it, and then
Yeah,
the question
and
is just
then
finding and getting the right information.
it gets mailed.
Yeah. Would you be willing to spearhead that
Yeah.
sort of project?
Cool.
I
Packet
created a draft
development?
of the packet.
Because then we're just asking for postage, right? Basically.
Yeah, then we're asking for postage and, postage, printing and postage.
Yeah.
And there is some board money, I think $500 a year, which I don't know that we've been tapping into.
Yeah, and if we just put it in like a trifold, if it all fit on one sheet, just
Yeah.
guide it. I don't know.
That's a great idea.
Let's do that.
Okay.
How do you wanna craft it in a word thing here?
Oh, let's see, where does that tie to?
I think maybe Pete, information question for the city is how many real estate transactions meet that requirement?
Right,
Because if it's 100, it's a lot different than if it's 10,000.
yeah,
Think
that's what
about-
I'm thinking, is like, it's a fairly limited subset of
Yeah,
properties. It's
We can look at the historical data and be like, over the last 5 years, it was.
Yeah.
32 a
yeah,
year.
Seems like a low cost.
maybe low, yeah. And once we know it, then it's easier for us to go say, we need $500, we need $800 to do this, and here's why.
Until Oregon City becomes a boom town.
well, that's kind of like right in line with, it's a more specific implementation of what's already in 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, should we enshrine it in words, or do we wanna? Put like a sub-bullet?
It's up to y'all.
How do you wanna phrase it on our work thing?
I mean, for the ultimate product that we're gonna produce.
Yeah,
You know, I think here's a suggestion. If your goal is to try to minimize some of these goals and distill them down, my recommendation would be to, well, let's read this. It says, improve awareness through the city website brochures, QR code signage and social media for awareness and interpretation of local natural and geological features, trails, stormwater facilities, watersheds, and sites. I would strike all of those and just put the natural resource overlay.
okay.
Okay.
So, William, the vision is the idea that you just described fits really closely with some other kind of planned actions.
Yeah,
And to simplify the plan that we're expressing to our city leadership and to our community members, let's just put this into one sentence that accompanies that captures what you said, included with what we've kind of described in the past. Does that feel like enough for you, or do you feel like we should define it more clearly and put a separate line item or something?
Well-
I trust your judgment. I mean, you know better than I do.
I mean, yeah, if we're putting together, let's say we put together a brochure or a webpage or some social media post of some kind. You know, we're gonna be like, we've got this overlay district, but it's regulatory. It doesn't, the incentivization to do projects is really not a big part of that overlay district, but there are a whole bunch of listed exemptions for restoration projects and things that you can do as a homeowner that you don't have to get a lot of city approval for, provided they're within these parameters. For example, it says pre-existing gardens can be maintained, but it doesn't say pre-existing gardens should strive to plant native plants instead of Kentucky bluegrass. Something like that, you know. So, yeah, so that's where it could provide more guidance for a home.
Yeah, Pete, I'd like your suggestion of simplifying that line.
Yeah.
I think we can have it as our team plan to take on initiative and others.
Yeah, the only note is that there's no specific line item that talks about project like this. So we would have to take that on, knowing it's supported by that generalized bullet in the work plan. But it keeps us on our own initiative to keep projects going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the far side of that coin is if every good idea project that we decided to take on, we wanted to put in the work plan, it'd be a giant word cloud.
Yeah,
Nobody would ever read, you know, so I think when we can simplify it, it makes sense too. Knowing that we're not the audience of this work plan. Community members and city leadership is the audience.
Yeah, but if you guys wanna take the initiative to design something, I'm happy to assist. Bearing in mind that we've got BCD USA and the tree canopy assessment to write a grant application and implement.
Those big deals, of course, that this group has been talking about for years now.
Mhm. So it's a priority, but it may not. It may carry on through the.
But I feel like that's an easy win, though. You know, like if we get the design part done, then it's just about asking for the money and then once a year, work plan to check on it. You know, it doesn't take a bunch of meetings for anybody to say yes, except for the postage.
Sure.
and printing.
I agree. All right, other ideas? I have mine, but I wanted to let you guys.
I wanna talk about Jerry's stuff.
Mhm.
And kind of like it's so valuable for folks like Jerry to come in here and talk with us. And what he's kind of offered us is to leverage the work of a bunch of community members, which is really valuable because all of us, I think, have like full-time jobs, and this is like a lot of our volunteer commitment and probably not willing to do what this kind of a group can do. Also, everybody who comes and sits here, we can't put them in a work plan. So how do we find the balance? And my thought is we find some way to give a somewhat direct, somewhat indirect nod to what Jerry has asked us somewhere in the work plan, where he can see those words and recognize, yeah, this is what I asked. So I'm not talking about adding line items or anything. But what I'm wondering is, can we consider, are there line items within the work plan that we can find some wording from Jerry's request to send the signal that like, yes, we heard you, we understand, we really want your help. But we sent that signal without sending the signal that we can just take on everybody's project and put it in the work plan, because we can. We've already been talking about our priorities. So I don't know the answer language wise to that. But you know, you think of the years that some of us have been doing this, not too many people come with requests like this that is backed with a substantial offer of help for, I think, things that we can all say are really valuable to this committee and this community.
Well, one thought I had was, so we have working with community groups, working with the community, for raising awareness. And, but they also want about like generally supporting other groups in their initiatives. We have it broadly. I don't know the name of this group, other than Unrod Group, that's what he calls it, but we could, either put that in there, or generalize their, like, localized, community groups efforts, including those like the NR group.
Or now, speak out of the other side of my mouth, do we find opportunities to invite them to come in and present with us?
Sure.
Right now, some of this is kind of vague.
Yeah, and they also propose a tour,
Yes.
so we could recommend.
Read both. I think we could include their language as a nod to them, but also. With the opportunities to collaborate. We haven't struck number 3 out of section 1, right?
Section 3 and section
Section 1, number 3.
3,
That seems like, to me, that's where it fits.
okay.
Yeah, I thought it fit well under 6 too, you know, support city partnerships with all those groups and other groups for habitat improvement projects within the urban growth.
So this is looking at, the overlay district though.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to kind of clarify for Jerry that the NROD is not a code where you call out like specific groups and specific projects and specific sites. It's a general thing with a list of exemptions where projects like that don't have to go through NROD review. You know, they're just, if they've got city support, then the most that we would require is an explanation of what the project is. And then it gets an exemption. But if it's gonna be on public land, it's like, well, which public land? Is it parkland? Is it public works? Does it require input from PrAC or Tom Kissinger or some of the other staff? And those are things I just don't know the answers to, because this is very broad.
Is he talking about like the extent of the NROD or what is considered in versus out?
Well, I think we already included a paragraph when Doug Neely was on the committee. We added the paragraph into the NROD that said the Natural Resources Committee is available to provide advice and support for projects and ways to enhance habitat, whether or not it's related to a development and whether or not, and irrespective of any code requirements. So that's already in the code. And then in addition to the exemptions lists, you know, which are allowed by right. So I don't see any conflict.
I have, so this is a topic I'm familiar with a little bit. And I think part of what he's thinking about tidying up is that like we have this static data set that that is getting updated when we annex new properties into the city. But the NROD that was developed in the 1999, like doesn't extend
static
into
map.
those annex properties. So when they bring them in, they have to look for adjacent NROD that touches that property. And then the NROD extends into that property based off that habitat type. So like a riparian corridor.
Yeah, I mean, our natural resource overlay district map does go out to the urban growth boundary. And the county also has regulations for Title III and Title 13, which is what the NROD regulates as well. So there are some similar maps that the county regulates under their code. And then if a property is annexed in, you know, we will be saying, you know, you're now subject to the NROD.
But if they had like a pocket
Yeah,
that didn't touch,
if they find a wetland that doesn't touch the NROD, then it's
then the NROD doesn't
then it's
extend.
only subject to Corps of Engineers or Department of State Lands regulations. And it's seldom that we run across, but because the NROD is pretty extensive. But, you know, that is a city commission would need to adopt a new map and an inventory of all of the wetland sites. You know, it's not feasible at this point. You know, we rely on development applications to do the on-site work. So,
So did this come up because you know that is what Jerry was talking about? Because that's one of the ideas.
Yeah, this is an old topic
Okay.
in my experience.
Do we know what these other ones are? I mean, have you all seen this or them?
So the topic if the topic I think he's talking about is the same one that I remember, is that the old NROD is decades old.
Yeah.
Doesn't reflect current landscape of Oregon City. And when a developer comes in, they have an inherent desire to not have to do more work than they have to do and develop the land as much as they can. So if they can avoid additional regulations, that's financially better for them. So that's what happens. So I think that's what Jerry's trying to
is that what he's trying to
address, is like, if we don't have this additional regulations, then we might lose valuable habitat that falls under NROD because it doesn't touch adjacent NROD when an annexed portion is coming in, or other similar types. That's what my
So his desire is just to
Understanding
get
is-
rid of that rule that it has to already be touching an existing INROD boundary in order to.
Who wants to redo the whole data set?
Yeah, I don't think it's as big a problem as he thinks. I think that the Enrod overlay is fairly accurate. It, You know, it's a big overlay. It extends 50 to 100 to 200 feet beyond where the resources are. And it captures a lot of variation in that process. The reason it was done in 1999 was because the state required it as part of periodic review. And they required a lot of cities in the metro area to do the same thing. And they funded it. Which was why it was done. So, and we had to adopt that in order to be in compliance with water resource overlay district requirements for Metro, and then 2008 we updated it for the habitat part. And there was a lot of mapping done, and based on LiDAR and as many data sources as we could were put into the ordinance as references that developers have to look at. So I'm not too concerned that it doesn't do the job it's supposed to do, which is balance habitat protection with requirement to provide housing and employment with the urban growth. It's all about balancing those two things. So, yeah. But, you know, if the city commission, I don't think there's, the city commission on their own is not gonna update the end of that. They would rate for some broad indication from DLCD that it needs to be done. We're not being told that it does. Department of Land Conservation and Development.
It's a state agency.
Yeah, and we're beholden to them for compliance with statewide planning goals. And we're also beholden to Metro because we're a metro city.
So guys, I think we're going pretty far down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think
on
we
an
are
assumption
too. And
that may
we
not
kind
even
of
be
pulled
what
that.
what he wants to talk about. So
Mhm.
my, I guess, ask or suggestion is that we get with Jerry and invite them to come in and present with us what they want to talk about.
Sure.
And then we look for somewhere that really makes sense in our plan to use the quote, not just on Arbor Day.
Mhm.
Because I think that's something that he kind of leaned into really hard when he said that, and he's totally right. That's a message that we can share with our community of, look, this is something that we can think about every day.
Mhm.
And, you know, maybe that meets both the requirements of showing Jerry we're grateful that he came and talk to us and for all the work that he and his group does, and also give them the chance to come and speak their piece.
I would like to hear details.
Yeah.
Oh, good. If you address some of the city commission priorities.
Yeah.
That I am excited about. Tree canopy assessment. Pursuing grants, my question for you, Pete, is what is the bandwidth or opportunity to ask staff to support us in any of those grant
Yeah, you
efforts?
know, get the ball rolling now. The city commission has folded it into their priorities. And, you know, Tom Kissinger and I would be jointly kind of kicking that off. So it's early days and I haven't really put any thought into it yet. I haven't looked at the ODF website lately to see what. Huh?
The IRA funding
Yeah,
is under murky
you're right. That's my.
waters right now. Federal funding it's being contested by courts, but that doesn't mean money is available. So, and my state partners that I coordinate with I'm not sure,
I'm not
whether,
even-
like, they got their money, like, was allocated in the last budget. So I don't know if that means they're sitting on a pile of money, that's, they're waiting to give out.
Mhm.
But if that's just on an annual basis. So they probably had written a bunch of checks from that grant last year.
Mm.
I don't know, how available that grant opportunity is gonna be in the next years.
Yeah, so,
So there's there's their DLCD one might still be a state one. That is not IRA,
Mhm.
IRA,
okay.
the Inflation Reduction Act.
What's the DLCD one?
It's the green infrastructure grant.
Okay,
You might know about it, or heard about it.
yeah,
They also support inclusive engagement with typically underserved communities. So that would have to be a focus.
okay, well, we're done that, with Kelly Reed, she's our regional rep. She was our associate planner here, but now she's for DLCD as the regional rep, so I'll ask her.
You can talk to Laura Buell, she's the.
Laura Beal, yeah, okay. Okay. See which of those is feasible.
Yeah, and then you could probably, I don't know if that could also include the city arborist one, but that might be too. I don't know how. That's not city infrastructure, that's not green infrastructure.
Yeah, that's something that has to come from the city general fund, I think. The discussion had the most traction with Public Works and the arborist position being under Public Works because they have more funding from the general fund. And planning division doesn't have a big budget. And we've always been pushing back saying that street trees are part of the right of way and should be part of the public infrastructure, just like everything else. And therefore, Public Works should have the arborist position, the forester position.
Mhm.
My last discussion with Dana Webb, our new city engineer, was she agreed. But, you know, it wasn't in the current budget. So.
So can you clarify what the city commission is asking for in that topic?
I think they're asking for more details about what this position would do, more specifically in terms of would it only be responsible for city lands and then, you know, I think that's what I'm asking. for.
Okay, what's the breadth of their
Yeah,
position?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's
Because
easy.
I don't think they're thinking that it's gonna go hand in hand with a comprehensive rewrite of the tree code. I think they're saying we're gonna maintain the canopy that we have and try to enhance it, but not change the tree canopy. So what does that mean? It means that we focus our resources on public right of way, storm ponds, parks, and those sort of city owned areas. And I guess the question that the city commissioner has is, you know, what is the city spending on arborist work now?
Yeah, that's my question.
And is there a cost savings associated with having an in-house arborist, forester,
And equipment.
and equipment? Right.
Versus contracting, yeah.
Yeah,
So they would support like staff researching that question.
I don't know. I have to follow up. Because I am
I
gonna.
don't have that information.
I don't have it either. I think their first priority was to have do a canopy assessment.
So there is like free web tools available
Mhm.
For anybody to do like a high level assessment. And ODF is gonna be developing a web tool for that as well. And have it free for the state to use. I don't know when it's gonna launch though. But, but that's looking at, I don't know, like whatever data set they have canned, so that it might be the most recent aerial imagery
Hmm.
that it's looking at.
Alright.
And then you can basically have an outline of your municipality. It will look at the aerial imagery of your municipality and then through GIS analysis, estimate how much of that aerial imagery is tree canopy versus like lawn or
So the
develop
source of the aerial imagery.
LiDAR data.
The
So-
cities gathered.
Metro has a connection with like the county. And so, and the state has some connection with it too. So basically, you know, LiDAR. Let me know if you don't know what LiDAR.
I've heard, tell me.
It's basically airplanes flying back and forth in the sky above the landscape that they were scanning, and they have lasers from that airplane scanning that landscape below, beneath the plane, and they just do tracks like back and forth, kind of like how you mow a lawn or something with the airplane. And you're collecting data with these lasers that bounce back. What's the word? Light energy.
It's like a detailed topographic kind
It can do that. It knows what is ground versus what is vegetation, and even what is the structure. So due to like GIS magic, you can delete anything that's on top of that landscape and know what the topography is. So it's really cool what LiDAR can do, but
Sorry,
It
when I said
can also-
topography, I meant like the topography of trees. Tall trees and small trees.
oh yeah,
Right, yeah.
but it can know like based off of that light energy that it reads and it sensors what is tree canopy versus what is open lawn or a prairie or a green roof. So
But can't tell a maple from match.
not in LiDAR. You have to put it into a different black box to do that sort of work. But yeah, that's higher level work analysis, but it's getting better at that every day. So it can essentially know, like they do it in like the Forest Service to find like pockets of dead trees. And they know like, oh, this stand is being affected by some pathogen that's killing all these trees. And versus like someone having to just like spot in or even just looking at imagery, they can feed it into AI basically, and you can train it to say like, look for pockets of dead trees, look for ash trees, look for these specific species of trees because this is what they look like.
Neat.
And then you could train basically an API to like look for it, and it will spit out data for you.
It's
So-
infrared, right?
Infrared.
Yeah, so it can actually, they think that it can see differences in conductivity in water. And so they'll use it for detecting leaks in water systems. Conductivity coming out of the pipes is different than the conductivity of the storm. So yeah, there's a lot of.
So
Okay, go ahead.
at the next meeting, come back with more details about who the staff working group is for the canopy assessment and where we want to prioritize that. And because Tom Kissinger has some ideas.
All right, we don't have a whole lot of more time. Can you send us a draft with the red line edits? And let us know what you get from your colleagues about GIS queries and
Yeah,
capacity for supporting research and grant. support. Okay, I think that's the parking lot requirements.
Oh, we on the communication stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot. We had a recap on Arbor Day. We had a very small planting at Hillendale Park, the mayor. And like, it was ceremonial. We planted a sunset maple. Yeah. I'm sorry, not my favorite tree. It was selected by Parks. And
Sorry, I tested that.
We also had a organizational meeting with Friends of Trees this week to talk about our contract renewal with them. Budgeted tree mitigation fund is like $48,000 a year that comes out of development. To augment the Friends of Trees program, shooting for one community outreach educational tree care event per year, probably a pruning workshop. And then one larger planting as opposed to two smaller planting events in the spring. And Friends of Trees is going to send us a draft contract for that. Climate friendly and equitable communities parking code is going forward to the city commission on May 21st. And DLCD, Department of Land Conservation and Development, has looked at our code amendments and agreed that they meet their standards for what the city commission wanted to do. Oregon City decided, we weren't going to waive parking requirements citywide, which is what a lot of cities did do, but we are waiving requirements for a variety of land uses, and a lot of this is prescriptive and required by state law, and there's no discretion. You just have to implement it. So within a half mile of a frequent transit corridor, we can't require any parking. So that's bus line 33. And we can do that based on a walk shed as opposed to a straight line measurement. And that's what we chose to do, which is based on the half mile walking distance from the bus line. And also within a quarter mile of the city's regional center, which is essentially all of the downtown area clear up to Clackamas River and south to the mill site. So the regional center is one of 16 regional centers. You're not allowed to require parking in those areas. They're considered climate friendly areas under the state terminology. So it's a fairly big overlay. It takes in the majority of the city. We don't require parking for residential uses. We won't be requiring any parking for multifamily, assisted living, any subsidized publicly subsidized housing, any of the new housing types that we allow in the zone districts. We can't require parking. We didn't require parking already. So along with it, you have to allow redevelopment of parking lots for solar, EV charging, bicycle parking, and additional tree plant. And you can't tell a developer they have to have, that they can't drop below a minimum. The whole focus of these code amendments is not to require parking. But we have a lot of pre-existing parking in Oregon City. It was built in the 80s. So, kind of have to incentivize the redevelopment. Anyway, that's going forward. I don't have any public works items to share. And Parks and Recreation did not share any additional items other than the Parks Master Plan, which was accepted by the City Commission last year, but not formally adopted into the comprehensive plan, is now moving forward for formal adoption into the comprehensive plan. Planning Commission approved it last night, sent forward a recommendation to the City Commission to adopt it. And that is important so that you can get grant funding for all the projects that are in the Parks Master Plan. You got to have it in your comprehensive plan. So, yeah.
There was a line item about parking lot needing a plant list and planting
Mhm.
requirements.
Yeah, that's, you know, something that we could, well, it's something that we can work on. It's essentially something that staff would bring to you.
Okay.
And, we'll need public works input on it as well, but, we're gonna be looking at what cities that have different lists for parking lots, like Tualatin. Tigard has some pretty advanced lists, Milwaukee. So we'll probably be borrowing extensively from them and bringing that to you in a future agenda.
Okay, very good.
So we'll have input on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
sure. Thank you.
It is 8:31. Usually the extent of our meetings, is there anything that go to the order? Before? Dakota, do you have anything? Okay, great, well, let's adjourn.
Okay, now that we're adjourned, just really quick, I do have a thing. It's just not super related. I have an Emerald Ash Borer pub talk on Sunday at Oregon City Brewing at 5:30, and I'll have folks from Clackamas Soil and Water and then 2 people from Oregon Department of Forestry presenting. So it should be pretty fun, depressing, but you know, there's beer. So
Can you say it again, Sunday?
Sunday the 18th, 5:30, Oregon City Brewing.
5:30. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
All right, when that red line comes out from Pete, you guys, can you please, set some time aside to review it and, add your comments and suggestions.
The red line.
It's like edits. So,
It's to the.
Yeah, it'll be like
plan.
track changes. It'll be a Word document and track changes with the proposed, what we talked about. So you can take a look at it.
yeah, so we can make sure it reads right and it captures what we're gonna work on in the next biennium.
So, yeah, we'll bring that to you. The next meeting, our next meeting won't be until, July, mid-July.
Thanks again, everybody. It was nice to connect and look forward to seeing you another time.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Appreciate you
Thank you.
sticking around.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Dakota.
Thanks a lot. It was interesting. Bye-bye.
Good work, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for helping synopsize. Is that all right?